Okay, it's 12:03, and I would like to welcome everybody to the last seminar of the year for CQ, not the academic year, but 2024. And I would like to start acknowledging the land where we work. I wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home of many indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land where colonialism continues to have extremely detrimental effects on the lives and well-being of indigenous people. I invite all attending today to reflect on their participation in new colonial processes that are impacting people's health and well-being today. Dr. Magalhaes presently works at the state of São Paulo in Brazil, and where she works, she has many also indigenous nations around her, and São Paulo is the traditional land of the Guarani, the Mbia, the Tupi, the Caimbé, the Caigang, and the Carajá, among other indigenous nations. And we also want to acknowledge them in this presentation. And now I'm going to introduce Lilian, who has been my colleague, co-investigator, co-author for over 20 years. We have collaborated, and it's for me a great pleasure to have her here presenting at CQ. She is an adjunct fellow for CQ. And I would like to say a few things about her scholarship to situate her presentation. Over the last 40 years, Dr. Magalhaes has worked as an academic in Brazil and Canada. She is presently an adjunct professor at the Federal University of São Carlos in São Paulo, Brazil, and was an associate professor at Western University for many years in Canada, where she's presently a professor emerita. Her research interests focus on occupational rights of vulnerable and racialized populations, with emphasis on occupational justice, intersectionality, and feminism. Her scholarship has turned critical attention to exposing the pervasiveness of the colonial legacy, proposing innovative perspectives for transformational knowledge within occupational science in particular, but also occupational therapy and interdisciplinary contributions across the health sciences. In the last decade, Dr. Magalhaes and I have developed body map storytelling, a methodology that has been now widely used for research and advocacy in over 20 countries. On another front, Dr. Magalhaes has been instrumental in enacting linguistic and epistemological diversity in the editorial world that is dominated, as you know, by the Anglo-American perspective and scholars. For example, through her work at the Journal of Occupational Science, she has been the editor for dual language papers, working in particular between the Spanish-speaking populations, Latin America, Iberoamerica, and the Portuguese scholars, giving great visibility to what she's doing today as well, to scholarship from beyond the English-speaking countries. And today, Lilian will be talking to us about visual methodologies in Latin America, and I thought the title she has given, A Beautiful Landscape, Visual Methodologies in Latin America, is an instigating, provocative one at a time where everybody's talking about how difficult, how ugly the world is. So I thought it was a very interesting title to make us think and bring us together today. Thank you, Lilian, and I'll let you now start. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you for the lovely presentation. I start thanking for the invitation. I have been, like you said, like Denise said, I have been doing visual or studying or interested in visual methodologies for the last 20 years. So, and I am still very enchanted by that. So this is something that really gives me pleasure to talk about. What I'm going to talk to you today is I have some ideas that are consolidated and that I am quite sure about, but also I want to share with you some of the things that I am just starting to look at. So that could be something interesting for us to also talk about. So to start, I start with this picture because I love this picture. We have not seen a lot of body map, for example, being made with kids. Not very often you see it. You see it more with teenagers and with adults. But this especially, it was a meeting in the city where my university is, São Carlos, and my students were doing some sort of gathering in preparation for Christmas. And this place was orphanage, where people, the kids are there because of family troubles or all sorts of difficulties. And the student suggested a body map, and I have no idea how they managed to put more than 60 kids drawing a body map. And I love the picture. They decided to do, we have the Santa Claus, but in Portuguese it's called Papai Noel, which is Father Noel. And they decided to do a modern Noel that you are seeing is a very, very progressive mother. And I love this picture because it gives a sense of the power of body maps. I organized 4 aspects to talk to you today. First, talk a little bit about Latin American cosmologies inside the visual research practices. I want to emphasize the participatory element of visual methodologies because it's quite important. Then I will give you some examples of my own research and some research that has been done in this area of the world. And in the last part, I want to problematize a bit the image-related methods in the contemporary research practice. So the first thing I want to very quickly convey with you is Abya Yayala. Abya Yayala is the way some indigenous groups of the today call it Latin America call it their own place. So some scholars, but also some indigenous groups and some activists, some leaders have been proposing that we replace the expression Latin American by Abya Yala. Why? Because that denomination was imposed to the groups that were living in this area of the world for a long time before, in our case, before the Spanish arrived. So this word it has many meanings, but mostly continent of life, the place where life is, the place where light is, because we have a very sunny space over there. And so now I am suggesting that you think like 8,000 years before we are now, and think about what was that area that we now call Latin America to actually understand when we later on are going to talk in decolonization. So there is a very important scholar in Brazil. His name is João César Castro Rocha. He has been discussing, he is a literature professor, but he studied history. He's a very, very well respected scholar. And he says there has never effectively been such a unity. He's talking about the Latin American unity. It is necessary to accept the radical nature of this circumstance because from the language imposed by the metropolis to the very denomination of Latin American, the foreign gaze has been decisive in the creation of this physical and symbolic space. So we are talking about something that identifies us, that describes us, that confines us, but was created from outside of us. So when I am here talking about Latin America, I am talking about an idea that came from outside and became what we today are. So it's a quite complex circumstance. So now you see the map, right? It's a beautiful topography map. And when we talk about our continent, we talk about America. So in Brazil, there is almost a resistance movement that calls North Americans estadunidenses because people want to separate the idea that America belongs to all of us, is not just for North Americans. They are from the United States. So yeah, it was created the gentilic estadunidense. But let's talk a little bit about how to decolonize knowledge in that context. Tenzin? So the traditions that we have and the ancient, they come from ancient language in Abiyala. So if you think about that, right now we have in Mexico, in Argentina, in Brazil, some language that died, do not exist anymore, but we also have some language that is still spoken by lots of people. For example, the Quechua is spoken by more than 10 million people. So considering, even when we consider that right now it's estimated that we have 7,000 languages in use in the world, at every year it's calculated that 20 languages disappear. So over that, on top of that, half of the existing language, around 3,500, are threatened somehow and have the possibility to disappear in a very near future. Of course, I am an occupational therapist and I am an occupational scientist, and I am very interested in the relationship of occupation and language, what we do and how we describe it and how we constitute occupations through language. When I talk about the number of languages that we lost so far since the beginning of colonization, you understand that the whole historical environment, historical context has been quite jeopardized. Oh, I keep trying to move. Tenzin, is you. Just to give you a sense, right now in Americans, the three Americans, North, Central, and South, we have a little bit over 1 billion people. So, and in this 1 billion people, we have 30 million speakers of ancient language, originary language. The rest is speaking especially English, Spanish, Portuguese, and French, with variations in French, Creole, and the French Quebecois. So the unity again is in dispute. We are probably very different people, but we are in the same continent. And of course, we have an experience of continents being very, very diverse, but it's just for us to consider that language is something that we probably should pay attention because it unites us, but also divides us, and also exercise power. There is a power dynamic in the language context. Tenzin? So there is a very well-known quote of Frantz Fanon, and he says, decolonization, which sets out to change the world, is obviously a program of complete disorder. And by complete disorder, he meant the structure of power, the way things are done. So when I am claiming that visual methodologies could be an auxiliary system to decolonize research, I am thinking in a very complex way. Also, I want to situate here that Boaventura de Souza Santos has a very robust body of knowledge discussing scientific knowledge versus artisanal knowledge. And he does this opposition, he proposed this opposition for us to understand other ways of producing knowledge. So I want you to keep that in mind. Next. So let's see if I can talk to you very briefly about some of Abi Ayala cosmologies that have been inspiring my work and the work Denise and I have been doing. Please. So this is a cartography. This is a work of one of my students. Her name is Mônica Vilaça. She works in a huge slum in Rio de Janeiro, a favela. It's called Complexo do Alemão. Is a system of many neighborhoods, and altogether they have 300,000 people. And she works with youths, and they put together like a maquette, like a representation of what they would call ideal city. Rio de Janeiro is a very complex city with the traffic now, the narco traffic controlling parts of the city. So I love this picture that was taken by the youth themselves, and I love this story. This is reported in a paper that I put in the end of my presentation, the reference. So before I was talking, I was calling the different ways of knowing, I was calling it epistemologies. But now I have been reading more and more the scholars from Latin America, and they have proposed that we stop using the expression epistemology. It's going to be a moment that we are not going to use any words anyway. But they suggest we call it, we don't use epistemology because that is also an idea imposed from outside of the system that we have been working. So tentatively, I call it wholesome ways of knowing. Why? Because those traditions that I'm going to talk about, they all have some sort of common aspect, which is mind and body. the way indigenous groups think and produce knowledge in this area of the planet always has a component that is emotional, is soulful, and also is physical. Next. I'm going to start by corazonar. Corazonar is a word that was created. It didn't exist. Corazon is heart. And corazonar means to pass through the heart. There is now a very fair body of literature discussing corazonar. I will just, the most important person discuss it. Can you show me the next, please? So Arias talks about corazonar accentuating the idea of insurgency, the idea of trying to emancipate some sort of knowledge. So he says, corazonar constitutes an insurgent political response to the coloniality of power, knowledge, and being, which displace the hegemony of reason and demonstrates that our humanity is constituted between the interrelationship between affection and reason, and that has existence as a horizon. So it's looking at the future that we should produce knowledge passing the reason through the heart. The next, please. So here is Orlando Falls border. He comes, I will go back just, please, I'm sorry. I need to go back because I want to make a, yes, thank you. I want to say that this is a very challenging idea for the ones like ourselves who come from a very Cartesian kind of knowledge. When we pack in different drawers the knowledge about mind, the knowledge about body, let alone how we separate the physical, the anatomy, all the knowledge, anatomic knowledge is so divided and so squared that for us, corazonar is something quite hard, even though we are talking about, I am Brazilian, I am talking about an environment that is very emotional, that is very mindful in a way, but corazonar is a challenge. I will show you later on some projects based, inspired by the idea of corazonar, but it's not something easy even for us. Thank you, Tenzin. We can go. So now the guy, the falls. Yes, thank you. So this is Falls border, Orlando Falls border. He was a Colombian guy, and he passed away, unfortunately. But he wrote quite extensively about sentir, pensar. Sentir is to feel, pensar is to think. So it's thinking, feeling. And the way he explained it first, that concept, that notion, was the importance of looking for ways out to project into the future a society superior to the one we have. We are going to find it in Paulo Freire a lot. Paulo Freire is going to talk a lot about the future, and this seems to be the motto of a generation of Latin American thinkers. because in that very moment, in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, we were facing such a horrible environment with dictatorship, military rule, that the idea of a future would be something very cherished. Please, the next. However, Tenzin, thank you. However, he has a very nice way of explaining how he came up with this idea of sentir pensar. He says, I didn't invent this thinking feeling that appears in my books. It was near San Benito Abad when a fisherman who was with me said, look at us. We believe and act with our hearts, but we also use our heads. And when we put the two together, we are thinking, feeling people. So here he is acknowledged how he came up with, and I think I find it quite nice that he explains the roots of this. Sentir pensar is probably the most well studied and most replicated method, if you will, to produce social research in the area of Spanish-speaking peoples in South America. The next, please. Now we have Ciencia Nativa, native science. And native science is something that has been elaborated and proposed and suggested by indigenous scholars. What she is saying, and she is quoting Arias, is the concept of native science includes spirituality, community, creativity, and technologies to maintain the environment and care for human life, involving aspects such as space and time, language, thinking and perception, nature and human feelings, the relationship of the human being with the cosmos, and all aspects related to natural reality. So there is there is an emphasis on nature, on the way we connect to nature in the native science. And later on, I will give you an example of Viviana's, this girl who is speaking in the audio. Viviana's working in Colombia, and maybe it will be more clear for you when I give the example. Thank you. So there is one point that I want to keep with you, is that the decolonial locus for us so far has been pushing us to do collective labor, to understand the intersubjective relationships in the research practices, but also to understand that this brings personal burden, although also long-lasting life achievements. And very few people have been talking about the emotional labor of working in some areas of research. I know that in CQ, some of you have been paying attention to that, but this is something that has been pushing us, and sometimes more than we expected. The next. So now I go for a little while to talk to you about the participatory element of visual methodologies, because this is very important. In 2018, Denise and I and Natalia Rivas, one former student, we published a paper about body map. And it was very clear that in that review, we saw a strong relationship between participatory action research and visual methodologies as body map. So I was very surprised when I found this paper. I will read for you because I think it makes it easier. In 1973, while conducting a literacy project in barrio of Lima, Peru, Paulo Freire, and his team asked people questions in Spanish, but requested the answers in photographs. When the question, what is exploitation, was asked, some people took photos of a landlord, a grocer, or a policeman. This was taken from a book from Augusto Boal, who was very connected to Paulo Freire and wrote a very important book that's called The Theater of the Oppressed. So he goes. One child took a photo of a nail on a wall. It made no sense to adults, but other children were in strong agreement. The ensuing discussions showed that many young boys of that neighborhood worked in the shoe shine business. Their clients were mainly in the city, not in the barrio where they lived. As their shoe shine boxes were too heavy for them to carry, these boys rented a nail on a wall, usually in a shop, where they could hang their boxes for the night. To them, the nail on the wall represented exploitation. The nail on the wall photograph spurred widespread discussions in the Peruvian barrio about other forms of institutionalized exploitation, including ways to overcome those. So this is in a wonderful paper by three authors, and they have a background in India, even though they work in the United States, and they talk about participatory photography, and they talk a lot about Paulo Freire. But I was very happy to find this paper because someone had told me that Paulo Freire had worked with some pictures and some visual methods, but I have never seen him talking about that. You know, I am contemporary to Paulo Freire, Denise is as well, so it's not just because I am old, but it's because we are very lucky. But I met Paulo Freire in 1984 when he already was the Paulo Freire, the well-known Paulo Freire, was his student in one of his courses. But I don't remember. I try to remember him talking about visual methodologies, but I don't remember. However, many scholars who have been working with visual methodologies have been placing Paulo Freire as a root of this discussion. The next, please. So I will now also put here, and I really want to recommend you this paper by Caroline Wang. She is known as the creator of photo voice. Later on, I will discuss a little bit photo voice versus body map, but now I want to invite you to read this paper that's called The Taiki of Photo Voice. 2 years ago, the Qualitative Research Journal, they produced a special issue about photo voice. They invited Caroline Wang to write the first article. Denise and I, we were so moved by this article because she was able to come up with a reflexivity and an account of those 40 years of almost 40 years that photo voice has been done. But I just selected one piece just to focus on the influence of Paulo Freire in the photo voice. In 1994, Marianne and I wrote about this photo novella project as a tool for empowerment education. The article described the theoretical underpinnings of this approach: empowerment education, feminist theory, and documentary photography, promoting what Brazilian educator Paulo Freire, from 70, has called education for critical consciousness. The approach invites people to document and discuss their life conditions as they see them and inform policies. The paper in general is wonderful, and I think she has been through a lot in her personal life, but she has kept a very sharp vision of the photo voice as an instrument, a piece, a reflexive piece, always collective. Nowadays, we see sometimes people doing photo voice with one person, but the idea, the tradition is a tradition that speaks about collective endeavor. Next. So now that I have been trying to describe some of the inspirations for our work with visual methodologies, I want just to say this is Viviana, my Colombian former student. She just defended her PhD thesis last year, and she worked with a group of indigenous, two groups of indigenous, two aldeias, two groups in Colombia, in the shore of Colombia, a region called Santa Marta. But she has a reflexivity talking about she, a white girl from Bogota, how she would uh, uh, deal with the ancestral lands. So she says, stepping into ancestral territories led me to an intent to not identify myself as this academician that evaluates and values knowledge in time factors linked to a highly individualistic structure where only a few elects are recognized and rewarded. I know somewhat hasty thoughts, which even presented as well intentioned, insisted on adapting this experience to my preference on how to flow and concede. What was it really like to accommodate these other ways of knowing, allowing the seeds to occupy the accept area of the method and fertilizing it became relevant to emerge at a permanent exercise of decolonization of thought. This last sentence is inspired by Eduardo Viveiros de Castro, which is a Brazilian and is a very important scholar discussing decolonization and the knowledge produced by the indigenous groups. Viviana brought me a lot of reflection about how hard it is for us to establish a dialogue with a group that has different cosmology. And although it's our duty to translate it, it's not easy at all. And by the number of pictures and reflections and memos that she sent me in my phone every day during the 6 months that she was in Santa Marta, I was really, really aware of how hard that challenge was being for her. The next, please. So just again, to keep us thinking how to do that safely, how to protect our young and even our seasoned researchers from the onus of bringing to light topics that make people uncomfortable and trigger painful memories. This, I also have been reminding me how to do that safely, because sometimes it can be quite hard. The next, please. So now I will give you some examples, just here a little explanation that I gave before about using tentatively the term wholesome ways of knowing just to replace epistemology, because I want to follow my mentors, but I'm still trying to come up with something that's better than that. The next, please. So I start by the body map storytelling. That probably is something that you are very familiar because of Denise's work. And now we know that other people have been working with body map at the University of Toronto, in Toronto in general, and in Canada. But here, I just quoted a little piece from the 2018 paper. The potential of body mapping to decolonize knowledge production in the health science relates to its ability to create a greater range of voice through research, but also to engage participants as co-producers of knowledge and disrupt mechanisms that maintain hierarchies of exclusion. I really like this because I think we with body map we have been achieving at least part of it. The next, please. So meet Sophia. Sophia was my student, also finished in 2022. She's a beautiful girl. She has been working, she's now coordinating a mental health center in Brazil that mostly care for Black youth. And she put together a very nice project interviewing 10 Black mothers about how they would protect their Black kids in the very racist Brazil. So the next, please. So Sophia worked with body maps. She put together, she interviewed 10 women, and here I put her speaking in Portuguese because I have been trying to reinforce the fact that we have to accommodate our ears to different language, but I don't think it's going to be. Can you try dancing? There is somewhere there is audio file. No, that's fine. Thank you. I took this from a paper that she published about this map is from a woman called Gabriela. According to the recommended scripts, the representation of the symbol and the slogan in the body maps create the possibility of expressing to those who observe the maps a summary of the essential points that participants want to communicate, both in relation to their unique characteristics that we call slogan, and the elements that guide their actions, we call symbols. In Gabriela's case, being a mother in Black exposes an armed woman as if she were going to a battle. The slogan chosen was, "A Black mother does not limit her strength in defending her own with nails and claws." And so what she did, she put together the map, and I break here the picture because you see in her feet, one feet, the base of the feet is school, and the other base of the feet is family. And underneath that, she put this picture that she took from a magazine, and she wrote that a Black mother does not limit her strength in defending her own. So she represented her daily life as a battle. That mother was always talking like she was a soldier fighting a battle against racism every day in her life since she was a mother. The next one, please. Now we go to the Colombian indigenous territories. We did 2 different works during the pilot while she was negotiating with the leadership of the groups. We put together a project discussing the pandemics. How those groups dealt with the pandemics was devastating because the health system didn't care or couldn't care for their traditions. So they had people who was buried, died at the hospital and was buried without their families, which for them is a no. That's a very, very important moment to bury your own and to honor your own. So one thing, so we published this paper together with the leaders of the indigenous groups. And one thing that was important when we started negotiating the authorization to do the job there was mostly a photo voice. They said 2 things. First, they would never allow us to ban or to charge or to disguise their pictures. The way they understand is that they have to show their faces and their names should be in the face, in the pictures. So that created a lot of problem with the ethics committee because the ethics committee said, no, you cannot. You have to put in Colombia, they put actually a black thing over the eyes of kids and looks horrible. It's just horrible. In Brazil, before they used to do that, not anymore. But those leaders, they told us, if you're going to do that with our pictures, don't do. We are not going to accept. And we said yes. So this was the first thing. The second thing is that they asked us not to say the name of the virus because they believe that the words have a power, so they didn't want us to say the name of the virus. So that's why, and they call the bug, they call el bicho, they call el chiquito, is a small animal that is the virus. And we reproduced this in the paper that we were writing with them. And of course, the first thing that the reviewers, when we sent to the publication, they said, oh no, you have to say COVID. You have to say that. And it was a nightmare writing letters back and forth to actually be able to publish this way. The next, please. So here are Luz is the first girl. The second girl is Juliette, her name. And the third picture is Maria and Viviana, my student. They are, the 4 of them, they are weaving and talking about life. The weaving was a very important thing because when they are remembering things or when they were reflecting on things, they weave. This is something they do collectively, especially the women. So to do the research, Viviana had to learn how to do the weaving. And the reason you are seeing the pictures with their faces, I already explained it to you. The first picture is traditional house in the Cancuamo group. So the Viviana's was studying occupational processes at the end of life. So she stayed there for 6 months. The work was beautiful. And we now are trying to publish with all those difficulties that I referred before about her work. You can, next, please. Here, a close friend of mine has been putting together some photo voices also in the city of São Paulo. This is a beautiful work. She is a master degree dissertation of one of her Sandra's students called Larissa. And she studied kids in an orphanage. and the kids were talking about their environment, their city. And was so, to me, so impressive how the kids truly understood what they wanted, what they needed to do with the cameras, how they wanted to convey the inspection of their environment. I really, really recommend this paper because they did a beautiful job. The next, please. I will accelerate a little bit. Now, I want to call your attention to two works that are not mine and I'm not related with them, but they are just beautiful examples of using visual methodologies. The first one they call story listening as a methodology, but the whole idea is that they made a documentary, animated documentary about young survivors of the armed conflict in Colombia. And then after they make the animated documentary, they play it to communities and they consider, they discuss the reactions that the people listening the story. So it's storytelling and story listening. And I really recommend this paper because it's really impressive the way they came up with drawing the animation, collecting, generating the stories is a biographical thing, really, really interested. And with youth, working mostly with youth. The next, please. This one is a lovely project from Chiapas in Mexico, and embroidering is a very important. The textile practices they are very important in all South America, including Brazil. We really work our way in producing textile fabric and embroidering. And in Mexico, Chile, Colombia, Bolivia, all those countries, this is a very important area of the community life. And in this paper, they talk about like a variation of body map that they call body territory mapping. And I really want to suggest to recommend you this paper because they do a wonderful job putting together first the body maps and then embroidering the design, the drawing that they put together. It's mostly work with women's communities. They face many, many challenges in the situation nowadays, but it's very, very nice project. The next, please. Very quickly, this is the work as a photo voice of my student Flavia. She is here in the picture with me. And she is from the north of Brazil, so she is what we call Amazônida. She is from the Amazonian area, which is another planet. It's just a different cosmology, a different environment. And she is not indigenous, she is from Amazonia. So we call the povos da floresta, forest people, people who are connected somehow with the big trees and the big aves, the big birds, and all this. They have a very traditional way of party that they call brega, and she comes from a family that is very active in leading those parties. So she put together a study of the occupational aspects of leisure in the sense, but it's not only leisure because it has a meaning, a life meaning for them. They dress in a very specific way. And she has been doing a lovely job there. And of course, at some point in history, this kind of gathering was criminalized. The police was saying that this was not something morally defensible or whatever. But right now, she is still doing her research project. She finished the master and now she's studying Escola de Samba, the Samba school, that also that her family is related to. And now the Samba school decided every year they have a team, they celebrate something or they tell a story. And they decided that in 2025, the story is going to be that finally the Samba school arrived to the university because Flavia is doing a PhD thesis with that team. And I am very excited. I probably will go to watch the presentation, but we have been in this way trying to use visual methodologies in different places, in different topics, not well understood in my department sometimes, but this is what we have been trying. The next, please. To finish, to conclude my presentation, I want to just problematize a little bit the production of image in the contemporary time. So Susan Sontag in 77, she said, nowadays, everything exists to end in a photograph. She's talking about this 40 years ago. So if she was here still, she would be just shocked to see how the production of pictures grew in this 30 something years. The next, please. I want to highlight four aspects of the production of image, just for us to problematize this a little bit. The first one is the authority of the image, the idea that the image is true. If it's in the picture, if it's in the image, this happened. Here you see me and my granddaughter, Olivia, and it sounds like we are happy, grandma and granddaughter, baking a cake and producing this together and happy. But in fact, just to say that sometimes we see a picture, but we are not seeing the context. She was trying to convince me that she needed to try the icing that was chocolate before I put this in the cake, because she needed to see if it tasted good. So she was seducing me to give her the chocolate icing. And I found, today I found this picture and I found this a way to show you my granddaughter. The next, please. So generating images and working with the image, especially in the analytical aspect of it, is plenty of ethical implications, which I understand you may concede. So from the fact that image may talk about someone who is not involved in the picture, that we call secondary participants, through the fact that we may represent, we may show people in a different way. We may create a narrative that is different from the narrative that the people depicted in the picture would produce to themselves. So this is something that I think we don't talk a lot, we don't reflect about, but I have been trying to push my students to understand the ethical implications of generating pictures. The next, please. Oh, this is the picture of my family. My uncle is holding my hand. I have these little shorts. My mom is the second woman from the left. She is holding a small baby. My father is the second man. The first man is my grandfather. My father is the second man who is holding my brother. Most of people in this picture is already passed away. My grandmother is beside my uncle who has sunglasses. But this is my family. And even though they look like they are very serious, we are very festive and very connected and very, very brave. So sometimes the pictures show something that is portrayed and is seen as a different context. And that has been part of the big discussion with indigenous groups in South America and Latin America, with African groups of activists, and because people portray and create a narrative of vulnerable poverty and all this no end kind of reflexivity. But I want to say that there is also pride, there is also history, there is also documentation. So we have to consider several sides in the case of image. The next, please. One discussion that we probably should have in a very conscious way is the fact that technology now has been changing the way we produce images, the way we disseminate image. In the left side, you have the one image of Rio de Janeiro, the city where I was born, which generated by artificial intelligence. The second in my right side is a normal, a classic photo, but seen from the opposite side of Rio de Janeiro. It's a city called Niterói. So you are seeing in a different position that normally the pictures show. And we have to reflect of how the possibility of changing pictures is going to impact the way we do research. The next, please. And I just, to conclude my talk to you, I want to use Eduardo Galeano, that is a Uruguayan author, very, very beloved in South America and Latin America in a way. He says he has short poetry that is very moving, and I selected that one to you. It's called The Grape and the Wine. A man from the vineyards spoke in agony into Marcela's ear. Before he died, he revealed his secret to her. The grape, he whispered, is made of wine. Marcela Pérez Silva told me this, and I thought, if grape is made of wine, perhaps we are the words that tell what we are. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm willing to listen to you now, talk to you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lilian, for this very stimulating presentation. I would like to invite those of you who can use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of Zoom to do so, because then I will see that you want to ask questions. And you can also type them. If you cannot open your camera or you cannot use your microphone, you can type them. I have my chat open, so does Tenzin, so that we can have comments or questions to Lilian. Get recording of the session. Yes, this session has been recorded. We are going to post it by the end of the week on the CQ website. It will be available, okay? So thank you for your question. Now, who would like to start? Alessandra from Brazil is saying, amazing presentation, Lilian. Lilian, I was intrigued by the title, beautiful, like the word beautiful in the title. So I want to say that I was listening to you, thinking about what is it that you are describing as beauty? And there are many concepts, like that's why I call it instigating. There are many concepts that made me think a lot about the Abi Ayala production of knowledge and different ways of knowledge production. But for me, your emphasis on future, you didn't use the concept of utopia from Freire, but your emphasis on future and hope in certain moments made me think that the beauty of the arts-based methodologies, visual methodologies, is in its capacity to produce resistance, vitality, and hope. So that's how I connected the elements. Am I reading your work right? Or is there more, or did I miss the point?
I think you are. I think I probably failed to mention that I think I can talk as for unity. One thing that defines us Latin Americans is the inclination to color, to light, to aesthetics of the place. It may not be the well-taste aesthetics, but aesthetics for us is a very important notion. So people dress up to go to dance, dress up to go to the church, to go to pray, to go to eat together with people. So I think by beautiful, I want to say that there is an enlightened reality beyond poverty, beyond violence, beyond what has been now portrayed as a main narrative about us. Is mostly that.
Thank you for adding that. We have some other comments or people saying that your presentation made them... Oh, someone wants to use... Yes, thank you, Tenzin. The raise hand function so that we can see you. That would be good. Let me see. I'm moving through the... I know we have other... some of the people who are attending, yes, Brenda wants to ask a question. I just want to say, Brenda, some of the people who are attending are methodologists, are researchers who use visual methods. So I was going to invite them. So Brenda first, and then Oralia second.
Thanks, Denise. And Lilian, thank you. Such a beautiful, beautiful presentation. I feel very moved and want to think so much about what you've shared with us. One of the things that I've been thinking about, because I do digital storytelling, so there's that. And one of the things that I haven't done much work around, but it's called the digital afterlife. So it's this idea that once you produce the thing, it goes out into the world and has a life of its own, right? And you can't kind of control how other people will interpret, take it up, etc. And so I was thinking about your 4 issues, this notion of authority, representation, the politics of representation, even the technology one, which was a little bit new for me. So I just wanted to ask you how you think about that in terms of the visual work that you've been involved with, or that you've shared with us around this notion of what happens to it after. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Brenda. I think this is something that really I lose my sleep sometimes, because and then I said I would talk about body map versus photo voice. Body maps eases my mind because it's a more protected feature, is a more protected tool, and you can actually protect the process of making it and the process of disseminating it. For photo voice, video making, the whole other digital stuff is there. After you disseminate it, there is no coming back. So this is one thing that for example, putting it together with kids, I really worry, because the kids, even though we are pursuing the authorization with the kids themselves. We are explaining to them, etc. But sometimes the kids do not have the concept of privacy. In this new world, privacy is something that doesn't really make sense for some of them. So I do think that somehow, somewhere, we probably be writing some sort of structure that we could follow, or commitment that we could follow while working with visual methods. I know this is far from reality, this is far from doable, and that people probably wouldn't care less, but somehow we need to make sure that the fact that there is no end for what is out there. Of course, when you interview someone and you write about that, this is going to be there, but pictures are somehow more revealing. So yeah, you're right. It's a really concern of mine.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oralia?
Yes, thank you. I echo what others have said about how much joy your presentation has brought to me. Really, thank you for your presentation. So it's not so much as a question as more as I would like to hear more about how you think, or what do you, yeah, well, you've spoken in your presentation about many Latin American writers and theorists like Orlando Falsbordo, Paulo Freire, Eduardo Galeano, Arias, and your students, right? And so I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more about that place of, I guess, lifting up Latin American writers and scholars who are theorizing about knowledge production, methodologies, and how that plays into your work.
Well, right now there are many. Someone that I have been just starting reading is Silvia Cusicanqui. She's an elder now. I hope she still has a long time with us, but she has been leading a lot of discussion in the area of the dialogue between two cosmologies, different cosmologies, especially the Christian cosmologies and the indigenous groups. In Brazil, there is a new phenomenon, which is some indigenous scholars. 20 years ago, it would be impossible to talk about indigenous scholars. They were outside of the academic world. And now you have many folks writing, publishing, and like Krenak, Ailton Krenak has been writing quite a lot. And so these people, this is a new movement. I would say that this comes from the last 10 years. Not that these people existed only in the last 10 years, but they existed in the public view, in the public dialogue. Someone that is going to make movies, to make statements that the journalists would care about listening. This is new. I think this is a new landscape of the public debate. Of course, we also have a lot of political problems. We elect one dictator and then we throw this dictator out and then we elect another one, and then so you have and the freedom is something quite complex and problematic in Latin America, right? To say the least. So you have censorship, you have in the last 50 years, we have been through a lot. I am 70 now, and I think it's the last, at least when I was born, Getúlio Vargas, that was a president of Brazil, committed suicide because it was so heavy, the system around him, and I was born in that year. And so far, it never stopped. So, yeah, the future needs to be brighter because the the present has been hard. Yeah. I hope it helped.
Yes, thank
Thank-
you so much.
Thank you.
And Lilian, we have some comments that I've been saving for you in the chat. Some people will apologize because they have to run. Because it's 1:27, I think we should wrap up. Did you put your email in case someone wants to contact you in the presentation?
I will put now. I did not. It's going to be in the
In the chat.
yeah.
Yes, there it is. Thank you, Lilian. So in case someone wants to talk to Lilian about a specific methodology or author.
And I am sorry for the many technical difficulties. It's
Well,
mostly my brain.
yeah, we tried before, it was working, so yeah. As my
But
brother says,
it's my brain not working. That's it.
technology is wonderful when it works.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you,
So-
Denise. Thank you, Tenzin. Tenzin, thank you so much for your help.
Thank you for preparing. We know how much work it is to prepare a presentation for us. Our emphasis on methodology and working around the CQ agenda. So yes, thank you so much, Lilian, for putting the hours into the, we can see how much you have to work to prepare for an international audience, for an English-speaking audience. All that requires a lot of work, and we are very thankful that you have done this especially for us.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for all who have joined us today. And soon we will have an announcement of the winter and spring terms seminars. Thank you.